Picture this. You're enjoying a nice summer picnic. A fly lands on your sandwich. You swat at it, you miss, and you curse under your breath. It's a minor annoyance, right? But what if that fly wasn't just looking for a snack? What if it was a scout? What if, tomorrow morning, every single insect on Earth, from the ants in your driveway to the beetles in the Amazon, decided they'd had enough of our nonsense and declared total war on humanity? It sounds like a B-movie plot, but if we actually crunch the numbers, this wouldn't be a movie. It would be a massacre. We're talking about an enemy that outnumbers us, outweighs us, and has been practicing biological warfare since before we learned how to walk upright. Today, we're breaking down the terrifying, gross, and surprisingly scientific reality of the Great Bug Uprising. If we actually look at the numbers, this wouldn't be a fair fight. There are approximately 8 billion humans on Earth. That sounds like a lot until you realize there are roughly 10 quintillion individual insects alive at any given moment. To put that in perspective, for every one human, there are about 1.25 billion insects. If they all decided to stand on each other's shoulders, we wouldn't just be outnumbered, we'd be buried under a literal mountain of chitin and legs. In terms of sheer biomass, insects outweigh all humans combined by a staggering margin. We aren't fighting a rebellion, we're fighting the true owners of the planet. We've just been living here on a temporary lease that just expired. In the first 24 hours of the war, the insects wouldn't even need to bite a single person to win. They'd just need to show up. Our modern world relies on delicate infrastructure, and insects are the ultimate saboteurs. Imagine millions of ants and beetles crawling into our electrical grids. A phenomenon known as short-circuiting takes on a terrifying new meaning when a billion crazy ants decide to nest inside your local power substation because they're attracted to electromagnetic fields. Within hours, major cities would go dark. No internet, no refrigeration, no way to coordinate a defense. While we're fumbling for flashlights, the airborne divisions arrive. Just the sheer volume of flies and moths in the air would clog jet engines and air filtration systems. Global travel would be grounded instantly. We'd be isolated in our homes, listening to the collective scratching against the windows getting louder and louder. Now let's talk about the real biological nuke, the collapse of the food chain. Roughly 75% of the world's food crops depend on animal pollinators, mostly insects. If the bees, butterflies, and beetles go on strike, our food supply vanishes in a single growing season. But they wouldn't just stop pollinating, they'd start eating. A swarm of desert locusts can cover hundreds of square miles and consume the same amount of food in one day as 35,000 people. If these swarms were weaponized and directed toward our remaining grain silos and farms, global famine would be an absolute certainty. While we're fighting over the last bag of flour in the grocery store, the insects would be throwing a victory feast on our cornfields. If the war turned to hand-to-mandible combat, humans would find themselves in a tactical nightmare. Take the ants, for example. They are the masters of logistics and hive mind strategy. Some species, like the army ant, move in a living carpet of millions, consuming everything in their path. You can't shoot a carpet. Then there's the Asian giant hornet, the heavy cavalry. They fly at 25 miles per hour with a sting that feels like a hot nail being driven into your skin. Against an unprotected human, it's not a fight. It's a medical emergency. And we can't forget the cockroaches. They are the ultimate survivalists, capable of withstanding radiation that would fry a human and living for a week without a head. They wouldn't even fight us. They'd just wait for us to exhaust ourselves and move into our houses once we're gone. But insects have an even deadlier weapon: pathogen delivery. Mosquitoes are already responsible for more human deaths than all wars in history combined, thanks to malaria and yellow fever. In a coordinated war, they wouldn't need to sting you to death, they just need to touch you. Houseflies carry over 100 different pathogens. If they collectively decided to spend their afternoons landing on our water sources, our healthcare systems would collapse under the weight of a dozen simultaneous pandemics. We'd be too busy fighting cholera to worry about the hornet squads outside. How do our multi-million-dollar weapons hold up against an enemy that lives in the cracks of the sidewalk? Not well. Take the modern battle tank, designed to shrug off armor-piercing shells. It has a fatal flaw. It needs to breathe. To keep the engine running, tanks pull in massive amounts of air through filters. A swarm of beetles could simply clog those intakes, suffocating the engine and forcing the crew out into the open. Artillery and missiles are equally useless. You can't use a $100,000 Hellfire missile to kill a swarm of fruit flies. Our small arms are too big. You can shoot 1,000 bullets, but if there are 1,000,000 targets, you're just wasting lead. The only place humans would truly hold the high ground is at 30,000 feet. Most insects can't fly that high due to the thin, cold air. Our pilots could circle the globe in safety, but eventually they have to land. And the moment those wheels touch the tarmac, they're back in the kill zone. However, humanity isn't entirely defenseless. If pushed to the brink, we would turn to the one thing we're best at: chemical warfare on a global scale. We would see the development of crop duster fleets, massive B-52 bombers refitted to drop ultra-concentrated aerosolized neurotoxins instead of bombs. We would blanket entire zip codes in clouds of pesticides so thick you couldn't see the sun. We'd develop specialized flame tanks designed to create walls of fire to protect city perimeters, and sonic emitters that blast frequencies designed to liquefy the internal organs of anything with an exoskeleton. It would be an ecological catastrophe, poisoning our soil and water, but in a them or us scenario, humans have a long history of choosing us at any cost. The true turning point, however, would be the weather. Insects are ectothermic, meaning they rely on the environment for heat. If the war happens in the northern hemisphere, the arrival of winter would be our only salvation. As the temperature drops, the bug tide would literally freeze in its tracks. The great tropical and temperate zones would belong to the hive, but the great white north and the Antarctic would become the last bastions of the human race. We would become a species of the tundra, huddling in high-tech insulated bunkers in places like Alaska, Siberia, and northern Canada. This would lead to the era of the winter reclamation crusades. Every November, as the frost sets in and the insects fall into a frozen stupor, humanity would emerge from its bunkers like a vengeful ghost. This is when we would use our heavy machinery. We would drive massive armored plows through frozen waves of dormant locusts and ants, crushing trillions of enemies while they're unable to move. We would spend the cold months dropping specialized bombs filled with slow-release pesticides into dormant hives and nests, trying to wipe out the next generation before the spring thaw. We would race against the calendar to scavenge old-world technology and canned goods from the bug zones of the South, trying to reclaim as much territory as possible before the first warm breeze of April brings the enemy back to life. The world would settle into a permanent, frozen stalemate. Every summer, the insects would swarm north, reclaiming the forests and fields, forcing humanity back into our fortified Arctic circles. Every winter, we would push back with fire and poison, desperate to carve out a few more miles of habitable land. We wouldn't be the masters of the earth anymore. We'd be the stubborn survivors of the permafrost. So next time you see a spider in the corner of your room, maybe don't reach for the shoe immediately. Think of it as a diplomatic gesture. That spider is eating the flies that would otherwise be the frontline scouts for the Great Hexapod Uprising. We don't really want a war with the bugs, because in a world of 8 billion humans versus 10 quintillion insects, the only real winner is the dirt. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.